Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Ben here, and I'm joined by who we called the new guy last week. Was it last week we were together, Charlie?
I think it was doing a little Sherry talk last week and an Outturn preview this week. Life is good, my friend. How are you?
Welcome back, Charlie. For those of you who weren't here last week, Charlie is a newest member of the society team in the U.S., and so I'll give him a big welcome. And I've already seen some faces in the chat here, and I think some people want to talk some shit to you, but anyway, nonetheless.
All right. Well, I think
welcome,
that comes with the
Charlie.
job, doesn't it?
Good to see y'all. Well, happy Monday, first of all. It is officially the start of May, which I think for a lot of us is probably the most exciting whiskey, most exciting month of the year if you like whiskey, especially if you like Scotch whiskey. It's festival month, so here we are. Charlie, what do you think? Am I off in this?
I mean, I don't want to belittle what's on the table just because it's festival month here. We're kicking off with a bang tonight. So yeah. I think we got to look at what's on the table, the fruits of the bounty of the cornucopia of whiskey we have month on month on month, not just this month.
No, yeah. I know. All our whiskey is good all the time, but truly, I think this selection, we'd be lying to ourselves and to you to say that we don't look at May in its entirety as like a really fun month for Scotch whiskey drinkers around the world. And so we're kicking it off tonight with a pretty exciting selection. We got 5 whiskeys tonight to taste, and as you probably know, all of these are dropping tomorrow for society members in the US at 1:00 Eastern time. So, Charlie, thoughts on the selection without unveiling anything just yet? What are you feeling?
So this might be me still being the new guy, but I got the email confirmation that my samples were coming for this tasting, and I get to see the distillery numbers and everything. I was like, oh,
you're
really? Oh, okay, here we go.
Yeah.
I just I did the March one of these, I think it was, with Jenna, and I felt like that was an all-time drop on the table. Just I've been to I don't even know, probably 50 Outturn preview tastings when I was living in New York, and I felt like that roster was one of the best I'd ever had in one kind of previewing. And just I've only seen the labels. I don't pre-taste, so everyone gets my live reactions first time. I just poured all of these 30 seconds ago. Just based on the labels and the stats I've got, I'm equally excited this time around. It is a hell of a lineup.
Yeah, it is fun when we choose the whiskeys that we show. Now, I mentioned today we have 5 whiskeys that we're going to be tasting and unveiling here in a few minutes. This month we have a lot more. I mean, we usually choose a little selection of the entire Outturn, so a lot more will be coming tomorrow. But this is what we have for the time being, just these 5 tonight. But we get to choose the 5, and I think for me and for Charlie and I, we were both members before we worked for the society here in the U.S. and so it does remind me a bit about, we chose these blind based on the, their stats, the tasting notes, the cask information, just like, when we were members buying bottles, or for everybody in chat, exactly what you go through. So it's always exciting when it finally shows up on your doorstep and you uncork it for the first time and try to really assess if your expectations were met one way or another. And have you tried any of these yet tonight?
No.
Okay.
No, I haven't. Yeah, I know you've tried at least one of them.
I tried one. Yeah, I was at a tasting a Friday night in Philly, and one of these was open, but I think the rest of these I have not. So I'll be uncorking these in real time and kind of sharing some initial thoughts of each whiskey. So a quick little roll call for everybody watching. Thanks for tuning in. Tom R. first in the chat. Tom says, I hope to hear some "oh man" tonight. So that's I guess I was called out. That's usually my reaction when I find a whiskey that I really fall in love with. That's how I respond. But
I've noticed.
Oh, okay. Oh man. Stuart of Butte says, good evening, all. Good to see you, Stuart. Ernie says he's warming up with a little 73.107 cherry chocolate and chutney. Good to see you, Ernie. I don't know that whiskey offhand, but I remember releasing it. I don't think I've ever tasted that one.
I think that's an older one.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah. A couple of years at least, maybe. Yeah. Sean Spieth says, hey everyone, good to see you, Sean. Warren Buff's in the house, got a 79.5 sculpture guard in the glass as I await the preview. Well, Warren, await no longer. I do know that whiskey. I recall that one. That was fantastic. Whiskey Franco's back. Cheers, folks. How are we all doing? Joe Combs is in the house. Cheers, everybody. And yeah, good crowd. Good to see some familiar names, I should say, and some little faces by way of these little circular
little icons.
Yeah. What am I trying to say here? Anyway.
I also want to give one shout out,
Yeah.
Sean. I see that you said you picked up the Fisherman's Friends on the Beach, which my girlfriend also, who's a member as well, she picked one of those up, and it is, I think, her favorite society whiskey she's ever gotten. It's an Oily and Coastal Distillery 26, and it is spectacular. So if you haven't opened up that one yet, you are in for a great treat. If you have opened it, I would love to hear your feedback on it. But that was last month, so let's focus on this month.
Yeah. So we're about to jump into it. We got 5 tonight. We're going to go in order, and typically when we do this tasting order, we like to choose whiskeys that I think become more richer and more complex as you go along. Just because for every of you tasting at home, which I'm sure a lot of you do, you probably know the drill. If you taste something that's too heavy up front, it'll be more difficult to assess the lighter whiskeys. So that's the direction we try to go, which means usually you get the peat and the sherry and all the good stuff at the end. We do have a surprise tonight. Maybe not surprise. I think if you saw the email today, we just announced our club has just won 10 medals at the San Francisco World Spirits Competition, which is, I think, the most. And I wrote the email and I forgot to mention it's actually 10 for 10. We submitted 10 whiskeys and all 10 of them got a medal, which is pretty remarkable. So we got a gold medal winner with us tonight that neither of us have tasted, and I'll be releasing tomorrow. So let's get into it. Charlie, where do we say we started? We want to start with the one with the story. The story.
The one, yeah. It's the one you've tried. We'll go with that.
The one I've tried. Okay, I did try this over the weekend. I loved it, and I'm glad to revisit. But first one is going to be cast 63.91. Oh, behave. I'll try to put this up. Oh, the bright LEDs are really just doing me no favors.
There we go.
That's what it looks like. It's in the sweet, fruity, and mellow flavor profile. Hence that. What do you call that color? Fuchsia? I would call it a fancy thing.
I generally say pink. Yep.
No, Charlie and I were talking. We were just looking at the lineup before. We were excited about this one. Charlie, you got a little bit of story from Distillery 63, right?
I do. So Distillery 63 is, for me, like one of these under the radar. I think it's a distillery that in the next like decade or two is going to be a top name, assuming that the holding company that owns the distillery actually starts releasing branded product a bit more often. But every cask of this that I try, I just pretty much gush over completely. And I think I have maybe 4 of this distillery from the society, but more impressively, last year, I finally got my enthusiasm for Distillery 63 coming to a head, and I actually bought a whole cask of it over in Scotland. So I currently have 4 casks, and that one is one of the 4, and the one that's actually the most mature at this point.
What type of cask is it? I'm just curious.
It's just a refill hogshead.
Refill hogshead. How old is it now? How long has it been?
It's a little over 9 years at this point. So I bought it. Yeah, the other ones I bought all new make. So this one's actually a little bit on the matured side, and I have a sample of it, and I'm really excited to see where it's going because it's cool. Yeah.
Well, fast forward 10 years. If that were a first filled bourbon barrel, perhaps the whiskey could evolve into something like this. But we're jumping the gun on Charlie's baby that's aging overseas. Well, let's get into it. 63.91, 19 years old, first filled bourbon barrel. And I always thought, it's interesting. I mean, Charlie, you're the 63 enthusiast here, but I've always loved the spirit. I found it's very like ultra fruity. Maybe I don't even know about their fermentation process, but pretty fruity overall. Very, very flavorful, like high volume intensity. And now we're talking about a whiskey here on paper that's almost 2 decades in a first fill, fresh bourbon barrel, which we know that type of barrel over that amount of time would give a lot of flavor just in its
behave. Behave. I think I see where the name's coming from.
Yeah. So let's get into it. First one.
I just want to add, since you gave me the title of the 63 expert, I think one of the things that most attracts me to this distillery, and I actually especially love it in the sweet, fruity, and mellow profile, is it's got this really floral, super fruity taste, like the actual taste. But then the other component of the palate that I don't think gets discussed enough is kind of the weight of the whiskey. And it's this incredibly oily, viscous, heavy actual mouthfeel with this light, bright, really floral taste. And for me, it just creates cognitive dissonance. My brain is like, something that tastes this light, this delicate, this fruity, somewhat acidic sometimes, shouldn't be this oily, fatty, heavy, mouth coating, weighty. And that interplay is just something that this distillery nails so brilliantly. Actually, similar kind of to some distillery 26th releases sometimes.
Tasting note right here even says luscious, direct, and unashamedly delicious Highland malt whiskey captured at a perfect age. A pretty bold tasting note.
Highland malt whiskey. Isn't this a Speyside?
Oh, well, yeah, but technically Speyside exists
until 2009 was in the Highlands.
Yeah.
By the time this, or at the time this was distilled, most certainly still a Highland.
Correct. And yeah, for anybody, what we're talking about is that the regions of Scotland, the whiskey producing regions, the map was redrawn a bit in, what you said, 2009, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Speyside is, you have brands like the Macallan, for instance, a really famous Speyside distiller, and on their bottle they still consider themselves a Highland single malt Scotch whiskey producer.
Throw some people for a loop for sure.
Yeah. Anyway, cheers, everybody.
All right,
what do you think?
Cheers.
Well, let's hear your first impressions. You're the one.
So the barrel's definitely coming through, and what I'm getting with that, beyond the woodiness, the kind of distillate character is just like a green apple, like a really bright kind of acidic green apple. Definitely plenty of vanilla from the cask, pencil shavings, or like kind of a bit of a brighter wood, almost more in line of like cedar or wood pencil shavings, not so much like a dark kind of leather bound bookshelf type of old wood. And a little bit estery.
Complex. Yeah, I agree with that. And I think we talked earlier. Maybe, now I'm leaning towards my own expectations before even nosing this, but ultra fruity. It's a very symphonic, and just meaning that there's like flavors coming from every direction. And a single cast too. Meaning the kind of aroma I would usually expect from something like a vatted malt.
More nuance than maybe you get from one. I don't know. It's really got a lot going on. Now I'm getting more like putty, almost like a little bit. Sometimes I can get that in like unpeated Bunnahabhain, depending on what type of cask it's in, like a minerally putty clay type smell.
Yeah, I realize I don't have a water dropper handy, so I'm going to attempt to add water from another glass. This will be interesting.
All right. That is a fruity guy.
I told you. Ultra intoxicatingly fruity.
It's,
but go deeper on that a little bit.
It's almost like somewhere between fruit leather preserves, or like I don't know if you've ever worked behind a bar, and this will probably make it sound worse than how I mean it, because it tastes like a natural real version of it. Sometimes they would have like fruit syrups that you could use to speed up making a cocktail if you need to just whip them out instead of muddling fruit or something.
Yeah,
it's like a concentrated fruit syrup.
Yeah,
but tastes like actual fruit, not like something that's just high fructose corn syrup and artificial flavoring.
Yeah, I was thinking a bit of like Luxardo cherries in the sense of the fruit is syrupy. The fruit is thousand syrup served on a silver platter. I mean, it's really, really intoxicating, intensely flavored, and it does have for me, it has a little bit of that weight that I think you were hinting at. Overall, it's a pretty full body,
but it does that fun thing where like the way the fruit presents itself to me is crisp. Like this isn't like a mealy kind of yellow apple. This is like a crisp green apple that has that nice crunch. You can hear it when you bite into it, so it's that like really crisp taste mixed with that fatty, oily mouth coating texture. It's just so I love this distillery so much.
Yeah. Just add a few drops of water to it. And I'm being mindful of the fact that I could probably spend an hour with this one. I feel like I'm content for the night. Truthfully, I mean, this is my jam. It seems like this time of year, like right now, it's just, yeah.
My issue with it is I have only taken the 2 smallest sips. Like you were saying, you didn't have a dropper for your water. I've essentially done 2 eyedroppers worth of this thing, and it's just still going. Like I don't need another sip at all. So I could easily spend an hour with this for sure. And I think it falls into what for me is one of like the best kept secrets of the society. It's a secret for me. I don't know if anyone else gives a damn at all, but anytime I see a sweet, fruity, and mellow in like the low to mid 50s ABV, it's almost always magic. I mean, just once it downproofs a little bit and stays in that flavor profile, it's just always on target.
Yeah. I thought this is first pour out of the bottle. So I'm gonna call that a neck pour, but I thought it was enjoyable at 52.3%. That was good. I didn't have a dropper, but I just poured some water into another glass and just to transfer. But with a little bit of water, I think it's definitely improved. So probably now it's in my glass around mid 40s or something. Man, the thing is like singing. It's really opened up, really complex. A lot of different flavors. The sort of the worn. Let me go back to it. I was gonna say worn leather, but it was a little brighter than when you said leather. I was actually thinking of like a more new leather, but
I was actually going fruit leather. I don't know if you've had that where they like roll it and press it. And they get,
like that. Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. Where it's almost like a dried fruit type of taste. But I am getting actual other leather too. I feel like I kind of just visited the shoe shine guy where you get a little bit of that like bright. It's not polish in the sense that like it's not chemical or anything like that. It's just like that fresh, clean leather smell.
Well, for the record, I rarely finish an entire sample at our out on these YouTube streams, and I just
you sinner
the first one. No. I mean to say, like, I think for me that tells me what I think about the whiskey. Just usually, I kind of like try to be mindful of. I try to go back and leave some in the glass for if I want to revisit at the end. I'll just pour more.
Yeah, I'm going to leave a little in this one to come back to. I might have been a little overzealous knowing what distillery I was getting on that first one. My pour might have been a little bigger than it needed to be, but I've got.
Well, that's the other thing, Charlie. I mean, I finished it, but I'm not saying I poured 3 ounces. Probably poured an ounce in the glass, and everybody watching this is like, "What? Okay, big deal, dude. You finished an ounce." Like,
yeah, but we got 4 more to go through, and I mean, I know we get up pretty early to hit the books, especially on Outturn days. Make sure everyone gets the product they're looking for. Everything's buttoned up and ready to go. We got all the back end working for that flood of orders that we're going to get. We need everyone primed and ready right at 1 o'clock because I think some of these are going to fly. I just haven't seen the roster of what's coming out tomorrow.
This is for okay. Well, I don't want to jump in too early. This is a buy for me. I know that I'm not. That's like what. If this was what's the show where you're on HTV? What's the show where you sell things on the TV? Guys,
Antiques Roadshow.
Well, no. How about in chat? Like just the consumer, like that channel that you can watch, and there's just like always selling products, and it's like
QVC,
CVC or CVC,
QVC.
Thank you, QVC. Yeah. If this were QVC, I would really be pushing everybody to say, buy this bottle. Oh yeah, make 3 installment payments or whatever. No, but for me, I'm Charlie and I. You guys know this by now, but that's for me. That's it. That's easy for me. It's an easy one. Obviously, my full price is a couple $100. So it's like it's a I think it's a price for me, and I think for most members, where you got to think about it quite a bit more. It's not an inexpensive whiskey, but I think having tasted it, I'm like, okay, value is not questionable for me. Of course, that's subjective. So
I mean, that's for me. Distillery 63, low 50s ABV, sweet fruity mellow, 19 years, first fill bourbon barrel. It's just like check, and then you taste it, and you're like, okay, yep, that delivers.
Okay.
So
let's move on. Number 2. So we wanted to, as I mentioned at the beginning, we sort of get more complex as we go along.
You're selling number 1 short, calling that the least complex on the table.
So, well, what I was about to say is we make these decisions on paper without ever tasting them. And so on paper, that was, sweet, fruity, and mellow, full bourbon cask only, first fill bourbon. On paper, we were thinking, okay, that's going to be sort of the lightest. Will that be the case? I don't know. But the next one, we'll see how this plays out, because this is actually one that spent time in 2 different casks. It's 55.71, which is called New Shoes. There you go.
Fun fact with this bottle. So I'm training for a big running race, and I've just been needing to get new shoes. And I think my girlfriend's getting tired because I keep ordering ones that then don't quite fit right. And so this package arrived, and I opened it up, and she's like, "Oh, what is it?" And I pulled out this first bottle. And the label, I said, "Oh, it's new shoes." And she's like, I was like, "Oh God, another pair of freaking shoes. Just solve this shit already." Anyway, this is better than a pair of new shoes for sure.
You can't run with whiskey, but you can't have fun with shoes. That's what I would say.
You can run with whiskey.
Oh yeah, that's on your feet. Yeah. Anyway, dumb dad joke right there. Well, that wasn't even a joke. But instantly, okay, in the glass, a little much darker in color. So this has spent time in 2 different casks, both an ex-bourbon hogshead and then a first fill number 3 charred hogshead. So I think the intent here is to inject a bit more of oak into the character of the spirit. And, color isn't only indicative of so much, but this is noticeably darker and quite a few years younger at 14. Same flavor profile, also sweet, fruity, and mellow. Oh, there you go. That's a good comparison.
Yeah.
And also from Speyside. So 2 Speysiders for what's that's worth, from the sweet, fruity, mellow flavor profile.
Now, call me nose blind. I can tell that this thing definitely packs an extra punch. But I would have thought that this was finished in a cask, like something that wasn't a naked cask, like a sherry or a port.
For sure.
Yeah. Right. Like it's got so much dense fruit in there.
It's interesting. I get sometimes on a bourbon, like when just a pure, like a bourbon, single barrel bourbon that's like 10 plus years in age. I pick a lot of characteristics that evoke like a wine cask of some sort. There's like a lavender note that I've got. I mean, I cannot go too deep in this comparison here, but so I think what I'm nosing right here makes me think of some of those bourbons, like the really mature bourbons that make me think of a wine cask. So that was my first thought. And so when you just said like, "Hey, this," I would be surprised if this is a naked cask. I'm like, oh, you're having the same experience, but the way that you've got on there is different. We are on tonight. We're going deep already.
Here we go.
Second whiskey. We're going too deep already.
I think that's just the right amount.
I hear you. Definitely much more spicy up front, but really like a pleasant wood spice.
And some of that nuttiness. I mean, we did that whole sherry deep dive last week, and it's got some of that like Oloroso nutty going on in here.
I think you know what? Okay, let's play on your point. I think if someone handed this to me and said, "Look at this sherry finished whiskey," I would say that's a really good sherry finished whiskey. So I nose in it a second time.
Yeah,
I could be fooled for sure.
Agreed. All those deep, rich, and dried fruits fans, look out for this one. I think. Where's Scott?
Sean Speed's upset about our running comment. You might not run straight, but you can run with whiskey. All right.
Exactly.
Fair enough.
So back to this whiskey, Distillery 55.
Oh, this is so good.
This is one that we don't see that often anymore. But when I joined the society, there was just like a glut of distiller. I don't know.
Yeah.
There was like 4 or 5 casks at a time on the site. And it's funny because like I was not living in a place where I could try things before I bought them. There were an Outturn Preview tasting. So I didn't really ever jump on the Distillery 55s. And having spoken with a bunch of industry people and some really trusted voices who have had a chance to try way more than I ever will, they were like, "Oh, Distillery 55, like that is one of the great ones." And I was like, I was just always kind of like, really? Because like for me, it's really middle of the road. Like it's a distillery that I've never had a bad one, but I've never had one that really. And they were like, "Oh no." You'll know when you get a good one, and I'm hoping, because I haven't had much Society 55. I'm really optimistic based on the nose on this one that this might be veering me into one of those great ones I've always been wanting to try.
Yeah, I think for me, my early experience, like very soft and pleasant spirit traditionally. You know that was my perspective on it. I just took a sip of this one. It's like really meaty, really meaty. Very rich, and of course this has been spent time into cast. That number 3 Char Hogshead as a finish has certainly injected a lot of character and vibrancy, but like this is not what I would call a soft or gentle spirit at all. It's pretty cool.
Are you getting like a lot of peppery note, like almost baking spice, cooking spices, peppery? Like I don't know, that's way bigger and less. Like I might have even thrown this into a spicy and dry or something. It's kind of right on that border for me.
Like white pepper. Like I'm not getting a ton of it. I'm definitely getting a lot of like a big array of spices. I think it's splitting hairs between what type of spices, it is, but yeah, I would put this in probably a spicy and sweet flavor profile because it is very sweet.
That's true.
Very, very spicy. But look, these flavor profiles that we do, guys, are not a perfect science.
It's a little fluid.
I'm gonna add more water. I mean, it's really intense, and I think in a good way. Like it's a very loud, bold whiskey, but not in. I feel like usually when I say that about a whiskey, it's something younger. When I say something's loud or bold, this is really mature at 14 years. Again, 2 different casks.
You're getting, or I'm getting, a ton of that second cask on the finish. Like right as it goes over the back of the palate for me, kind of the vanilla cranks up a little bit. Yeah. But you're getting, I don't know, I feel like it's almost more of a toasted barrel taste than a really like charred barrel. It's a little bit softer, a little bit kind of more integrated. It's not like a punch in the face of vanilla. Yeah. That's lovely.
Yeah, I think between we've had 2 so far. I think the first one, let me put it this way. This one would probably be more impressive. Like if somebody, think of like a novice whiskey drinker for whatever reason, I'm going there. But for somebody who's newer to whiskey, it would be much easier to be blown away by this one. I think the first one, if you're a bit more of an enthusiast, you start to really appreciate the subtleties of Speyside whiskey. That's, I think, your jam. This one, I think, following the first one, would knock off the socks of most people, like really getting into single cask whiskey, or cask strength whiskey, I should say.
The 63 has a lot of layers and kind of hidden depth. Like in some ways, I say this all the time with Japanese whiskey. My biggest issue with Japanese whiskey is that it's so structured and so delicate that like I want to be in a room with the lights off and my ears plugged so I can focus just on the taste. Like this isn't at that level, the Distillery 63 release here, but it's, kind of one level above that where it's very nuanced. This has loads of complexity, but it's not trying to hide it from you, right? It makes it nicely accessible and freaking delicious. It just comes to the table and is like, you're going to enjoy this. Would you also like to enjoy this? How about a little bit of that?
You're right.
Make you work for it.
That's a really good way of putting it. I think because in my mind I was thinking this is what it is easier to appreciate. It's easier to appreciate. And I say that because for myself, like when I was really getting into whiskey for the first time, there were a lot of whiskeys that I dismissed and maybe the first one we had, that 63.91, would have been one. That wouldn't have been one that really caught my attention. Now it absolutely is.
Mm-hmm.
But this, I think, is much easier to appreciate. And so if you're looking for a bottle like to share with somebody, I really impress somebody as an introduction to, here you go. Here's welcome to the new world of whiskey that you'll never leave. I mean, I think it's easier to get you in with this one.
I think on the other end with that I'd be remiss if no one said is it drinks really nice for 55.1%.
Yeah.
Like it's really big in the palate. Like you said, it's not that super delicate, subtle profile. It's coming in with, it's announcing its presence, but not leaning on its ethanol to do that. It's not punching you in the face with proof. It's just punching you in the face with flavor.
I'm not reacting to your comment. I was just,
do you disagree with it?
No, I admit something. I was looking actually ahead at the one to come next, because I was gonna make a comment about the three whiskeys, the first three whiskeys, and just I wanted to take a mental note before I finish this whiskey, which I'm also going to do. I just made that comment. I never finish a whole whiskey in an Outturn Preview tasting, but this one's going to.
That next sip had a lot more tannins in it than I'd gotten before. Just a lot more kind of astringency, pulling the liquid out of my mouth. A slight bitterness, but adding complexity, not bitterness in like, oh, it tastes like I don't know, ate soap or something.
Yeah, I think with a little bit of water, the last sip from that dram, it was a great summary for me. When as you said, tannins, it definitely was a bit more tannic. The wood spices there. You're right in that maybe it's because we know it, but the number 3 char as opposed to what the number 4, which is the most common for bourbon casks, right? Number 4 is, I think that's the notice, is number 3, meaning it's not charred to the same level, same degree as most bourbon casks. Like, I think that comes through for sure, and I like that about the whiskey. And it's interesting, it's been fun to taste the whiskey, this particular cask, before it was transferred. It would be fun to do a compare and contrast. You know what I mean? To really see what did that second cask really do. But it sounds like you and I both can taste it.
Mm-hmm. There's definitely a lot of impact from that first fill cask. I mean, it is for 14 years a very cask forward dram, and not in a bad way, especially if you're someone who, if you look at a juicy oak and vanilla, or if your lane goes towards deep, rich, and dried fruits, right? Some of the profiles that tend to show a little bit more cask than distillate, then this is right in your lane, but with a different twist going into sweet, fruity, and mellow. So you're still getting those nice fruits and those sweet elements. And like I said, that just smoothness. I mean, it's wonderful.
Okay, hold up. I just realized something at this moment in time. Get your glass ready. At this very moment in time, we're drinking a whiskey from Distillery 55 that was bottled at 55.1% alcohol, and we currently have 55 viewers watching right now. So cheers, everybody. That is a moment. If you were ever looking for a sign. Are there any 55s you guys want to drop in there?
Is anyone 55 years old? Is it 8:55 p.m. anywhere? Is anyone 20 minutes in the future?
Do we have any other contributions? The trifecta.
Yes. All right. To the trifecta.
By the way, yeah, I had to add more whiskey because we just lost 2 viewers. 53. We got some of that maybe.
Do we have any Distillery 53 on the table coming?
I don't know. Maybe not
tonight.
Most nights.
Yeah,
the bottle costs $155. Oh boy!
Go.
Look at this.
My gosh!
Man.
How deep in the rabbit hole can we go?
That was one of the funnier things I've come across in a while. Look at this.
It's all a simulation.
Oh, yeah. Well, I may not have free will then, but I would buy this with my own free will if I didn't have this bottle with me already. I thought that was excellent. Really, really good.
And it's one last comment on it. It's actually, it's one that I think there are a ton of occasions to drink. It's a very versatile whiskey. Like, I think you were talking about how the first one was really perfect because it's getting a little bit hotter. It's kind of more summer months. I really think that this thing bridges seasons. I can drink this all year round.
I just can't get over the 55. The fact that I said, "Are there any more 55s?" And then someone said, "Actually, it costs 155," and there actually was a fourth 55
Well,
in there.
and it's
Oh,
55.1%, right? So if you flip that,
flip
it's
it
still
around, flip it around.
155. Yeah, it's a palindrome price
When
ABV
was
thing
it
going on.
distilled?
January
Distilled
55th.
1955. Oh, I wish that would be a little bit out of my price range, but
Yeah, that's not
um,
happening anytime
all
soon.
right. Let's move on. That was number 2. We're already 40 minutes in this show. We got 3 more to tonight. Next one, which I was jumping ahead at looking because I wanted to see the comparisons for the first 2. I thought those first 2 were, again, both sweet, fruity, and mellow, similar. I think tasting experiences. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe not. Those are very different too.
Very different.
I mean, if you look at Scotch whiskey as a whole, maybe you can make a case for, yeah, sure, but in the glass, that was 2 totally different things.
Okay.
135.49. Really, really, really excited for this one.
Really excited for this one. And a little too much light on there. Come on. Well,
Yeah, that's the thing about these bright LEDs.
I don't even know if you can read that. Looks
You'll
out of
trust
focus.
that the label's purple. It's spicy and sweet. I'm gonna do a what is it? ASMR.
Ooh.
All right.
So while you're pouring, I'll read 135.49. It's called Jack in the Box. It is a Highland whiskey from a first fill ex-bourbon barrel, 21 years old, 53.6% ABV. And that's for everyone who can't see the rolling ticker tape on the bottom. And it's coming in at 225. So Distillery 135. I love this distillery. And, now that I'm officially on the SMWST, maybe I'm not supposed to air out any of my grievances, but
You can do
oh,
whatever you want. This is not.
yeah.
This is not. I don't
I've
know.
always had a little bit of issue with that 135, 112, G15. They're all the same distillery, but they get different distillery codes. But Distillery 42 is just Distillery 42. 42 doesn't get the love splitting for the different types of distillate they make. But in this case,
that's just hold on to explain just a little bit further. I think that's a good point you bring up, Charlie, just for everybody so that you catch up. So 135.49, that means it's the 49th cask from what we call Distillery 135, which is 135th whiskey, excuse me, 135th distillery we've ever bottled from. But there are some exceptions here. This distillery that we're referring to right here, 135, we actually have different distillery codes set up, multiple codes from the same distillery. And that's because today our approach is that the distillery code actually follows the stills, because if there are multiple stills, typically, then in like a distillery like this one, then they're different. They get their own code, but that's not always been the case, and it hasn't been consistent. Because when you go back, you said 42. You're right.
yeah.
There are some that like 42. And I think I'm trying to think if there's others that are really the exception. Because 42 is a big one where you have 2 expressions of the same spirit with the same code, though, right?
Mm-hmm. Same code, but like for instance, Distillery 27, that distillery, not that we see much of that, let alone the other variants that distillery makes. I've never seen one from the society, but the other 2 variants they make got different codes, so they're kind of more in the 135 lane.
Yeah, look for just to clarify something that's totally unclear. Even with this clarification, the codes are not perfect, and our club's 40 years old now, so things have really changed. We didn't intend to be bottling whiskey from this many distilleries, 40 years ago. So the standards, the system has changed, but right now it's supposed to be that the code follows the actual stills. And man, this distillery in question has
so many
4, 5, 6 different types of stills. Maybe I'm trying to think. And they have different variants of the spirit, peated, unpeated, from
all these different stills. I mean, they've got columns, they've got traditional pot stills, they've got Lomond stills. I think they might be the only distillery that still uses a Lomond still. Yeah. They've got those plates that they can swap in to actually adjust the the density of the spirit that comes out and change reflux. And like, I mean, it's a freaking Frankenstein distillery. It's amazing. So anyway, I'm really freaking excited because 135 is, I actually feel like I've had a lot less 135 than say 112 or even 122. And it's just really a fun approach on this distillate.
We are also going to turn this whiskey club into a math club, I think, soon. If everybody stops buying whiskey because of some sort of like end of world apocalypse, we might just start doing math because, man, there's a lot of numbers, and I only know 2, 5 and 5.
5 and 5.
So yeah, right. With that, what do you think? First impression. So this oldest whiskey so thus far, back to first fill bourbon barrel, our first true Highland, and this 53.6%. You were talking earlier when we had the first one, 19 years old. You were talking about sort of a low 50s as being out the bottle. Is this low enough of your interest? Yeah. Okay.
I mean, for me, it was just like there's something magic with sweet, fruity, and mellow in the low ABVs, but I also find that I'm not someone averse to high proof single malt, but Willy Wonka, George, great call. Willy Wonka, not Frankenstein. Yes.
Yeah, there you go. That's a great call. Yeah.
I'm not averse to high proof, but I find that when the society chooses to release something that's gotten low, there's something about that experience with the cast that are chosen, despite being a low ABV, that is just wonderful. Like I was drinking what distillery is it? 5226. It's at 46.4%. It's a release from a few years ago. I had that the other night, and it is just like mind-blowing how much depth there is despite that proof. But anyway, yes, this is well within like pretty much my perfect level. Right around 55 is kind of my preferred ABV. Almost surprised this isn't old and dignified from the nose. Because it really does have that dignity to it. Those leather-bound books.
Whoa.
Not even an oh man, it's a whoa.
Well, I like to think I'm not entirely predictable all the time. Probably one of the most
it completely changed.
Yep.
Like halfway through, it is a different whiskey.
That's why I didn't just start blurting out a reaction, because it went in a different direction, and I'm thinking what started woody became very like velvety, sort of white wine-esque at sort of the end for me. I had like a very, very like transformative experience on the palate.
I am having a very different, but also transformative experience. Yeah. So I'm excited for the next sip because I'm in a totally different lane.
You tell. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So I started with like almost like a newspaper or like, I don't want like wet cardboard, but that can sound bad, but like kind of just that kind of muggy lignin kind of old books type of smell taste. And then it just veered hard into like mocha and cocoa powder and chocolate.
That is different.
Really different. Yeah. Really, really different.
Well, maybe let's, I'm going to revisit here a second sip and then add a little bit of water. We'll see if we can kind of come to a similar experience.
Martin says, is that the Jack in the Box? And that is probably what they were going for. It starts off, you think it's one thing, and then it comes out and just surprises the shit out of you and is something totally different. Sorry, are we allowed to curse on these things?
We've just,
I'll try not to.
This is like a 21 up, channel. So this is, as good as HBO, I would say.
Fair enough.
It just sounds like we have two different Jacks. That's the only.
Okay, I'm going back in, and I'm going to be having in my mind that kind of fruitier, kind of more acidic side, because I went like real dark taste notes, and you went real bright taste notes.
Freedom Malt says, Ben, you're a cloud of mystery shrouded by an enigma. I don't know, man. Thanks, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, this time for me, it's totally different again, but not what either of us said. I'm just getting like old and dignified style malt bourbon cask. Like, I mean, beautiful. Like, look up single malt whiskey with a little bit of a twist in the dictionary, and it's this. Like, it's, I don't know.
Look at the. I'm going to read this tasting note. I never read the tasting notes. Nothing against the tasting notes, but just because I feel like when we do these streams here, it would be easy to just read the tasting notes. But I feel like our job is to just share our human opinions. So here's the opinion of another human. The aromas jumped out of the glass like a circus clown jack-in-the-box as we watched with wide eyes acrobatic circus acts eating Asian food, just like eating Asian food.
Lo mein. Do you think they're going like lo mein or like sushi or like are they going with a curry?
I don't know. I don't know. That's why I was laughing at the note here. But
so Sean asked for the profile. This one is spicy sweet.
Spicy sweet is the purple one.
The dark purple.
Yeah. So look, I think for both of us, the whiskey has a story to tell. And it starts off in one direction and goes the other. It's pretty earthy for me. It's, I'm going to contrast it to the first one we had as sort of the benchmark, which was a classical Speyside, 19 years, extra fruity, intoxicatingly fruity. This is a bit more earthy, spicy. I went back and I mentioned it transforms for me into this like more of sort of a dry white wine. It's not my second go around and really thinking about that, trying to find that experience again. It wasn't exactly that. It was a bit alcoholic, what do we say? 53.6% for a 21-year-old is some decent strength.
Solid.
So I've added some water to see what's really going on. Cause I have a feeling the alcohol at cast strength was probably masking a lot. And that could be the difference between what you experienced and what I experienced. So
did you get like grassiness and like some just clean notes and then definitely earthiness, organic? Like this thing is, talk about complex. This thing every time I go in here is giving me something totally different. It's all over the place.
Yeah, let's see. I'm gonna go back with it.
I'm gonna like menthol, like that cooling, minty spearmint or something.
And the power of suggestion. Okay. Yeah. A little bit of bitter cocoa. There's a bitterness to it. Like it's a bit grassy too. At the end. I think it's a cheap explanation, but earthy, I think, is the way to just describe this. In contrast to the first two. Much less fruity, much more earthy. I would say adding water for me actually brings out more earthiness, which is funny because usually when I add water to whiskey, the fruity characteristics tend to become amplified a bit. Not with this one. It's more earthy, more bitter.
Now it's more like Black Forest cake, like just really that fudgy, deep, dark chocolate.
Yeah.
This is a damn good whiskey.
Yeah, it's a really good. Yeah. I'm sitting here thinking, okay, it's like a 3 for 3. Is it me tonight? Is it me or is it the whiskey?
What kind of day did you have, Ben? A day that every whiskey will make you happy?
No, not. It was a Monday. It was very much of a Monday. High stress, sort of par for the course on any Monday. But no, but I think for me, this is also. I like to check everything before we get into 5 whiskeys. It's quite the privilege to do this. So I like to think that didn't impact too much. I think the whiskeys are pretty phenomenal.
No, it definitely is. I mean, I finished this glass. And it's just because I don't even feel like I've scratched the surface yet. Like if this is the Jack in the Box based on how different it was each time, I feel like whatever popped out at me is a false flag. There's about to be another Jack that comes out and scares the shit out of me because I'm not expecting it,
Yeah.
I did it again. I'm sorry.
I mean, it would be interesting because the two of us are sat here drinking these whiskeys, tasting these whiskeys, I should say, because relevant to what I'm about to say. I'm in this dim lit room with these like random colorful hues and a spotlight on my face, and meaning I'm laser focused. And we're here talking about, so I'm laser focused. So it's one thing, I'm curious because for members, anybody here in chat, who if you pick up one of these bottles, you go home and we never really, Charlie, we get to share our opinions, but rarely do I get to hear on the back end, any comments of, oh, this was what I had was so different or similar. I would like that.
Yeah, but we should find some way to do a follow-up, like a round table, invite the guests to have their cameras on. I don't know if you and your wife watch Love is Blind on Netflix, but they did a little live special at the end.
I did watch a season one. Yeah, not recently, but oh boy.
It's not great. Not great, Bob.
Yeah. So I'm watching Jack Ryan right now, 5 years too late, but we'll talk about that.
Aren't you the star of that show? Isn't that you?
What?
Isn't that you? Aren't you the actor in that one?
What are you talking about?
You look kind of like that guy.
Oh, John Krasinski or whatever his name is.
Yeah. Super in shape, John Krasinski, aka Ben Diedrich.
Yeah, I haven't worked out in a year, but anyway, so since I injured my back, but good to know that I'm still.
Oh, you injured your back? Was it in a helicopter crash?
No, I was just just doing shipping logistics. All right. So, have you seen the show?
I watched season 1 and then I.
Okay. Yeah, I just finished season 1. That was my point because. All right. So here we go.
There we go.
3 whiskeys down. But my whole point of all of this ramble here was that we're in an environment where we're like hyper focused on the whiskey, and what we're not doing is testing it in an environment that I think most people test it. Or maybe I'm wrong. I mean, you tell me in chat. Okay, this is a question for everybody. Just if you don't mind, I'm genuinely curious to know, because I think what we try to do here is share our opinions in an environment that would be similar to how you would enjoy them. And so the question is, where do you drink your whiskey? Is it at home? Is it, sort of the environment? Is it with people? Is it with not? Because I just wonder, Charlie, if some of these.
Is it on a park bench by yourself? Is it...
That's the dirt of.
No, I think
you get what I'm getting at. I wonder if these would be the experience that we're trying to convey. I'm telling you, man, these first 3 were amazing. But is it because we're so focused and we've cut out distractions? Can really appreciate it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways to enjoy whiskey, and how set and setting changes both how you taste and what you taste so much. Like you even said, power of suggestion. You know what I mean? And so I find it generally really helpful to be drinking with other people, or to be tasting in particular with other people, because you can kind of riff off each other. You can build on each other. Everyone has a different frame of reference for what they're tasting. And so you can kind of like help each other work towards what you're getting at. I always really like the communal atmosphere. And I always really loved the in-person Outturn Preview tastings. I'm glad I get to be on the camera side of the virtual ones now, so I actually can talk to you about it and dive in. But I don't know. So long as you're really tasting more than you're drinking, I don't know if there's a wrong way to do it.
Yeah. Well, getting a lot of feedback. Ernie says, sitting on the back porch, looking over upon the sunset at the home pub. Says 3A Chemp. Martin Fielder says, mostly it's a dram at home, relaxing.
Me too, Martin.
JT sitting by my fire pit with some nice jazz music.
Lucky you, JT.
I'm down. Yeah.
Yeah. I would love it if that could be my answer.
It's in the Jimmy Jazz, but JT listens to jazz, but what does Jimmy Jazz say? Except for Chris, usually in the den with YouTube on.
Hopefully watching us.
I hope you got one right now. Whiskey Franco says 50% at home in my whiskey corner or the patio, 50% at local pub stores. Yeah. My point is, man, some of these whiskeys that are so complex seem complex to us now, but I wonder sometimes if you're socially, you can tend to do it with friends. There's distractions, you might not appreciate it as much. But that was a nice little ramble.
Yeah. All right, so we're turning the corner into, I haven't gone through the sales numbers to see if there's data to back up my inclination, but I feel like where what we're drinking from here to the end is the flavor profiles that tend to get people more excited. You know what I mean? Like super finished cask or peat, or like these are the ones that as a consumer I was always like, well, dang, that's going to sell out, isn't it?
Yeah, but I would argue, Charlie, again, and I don't have data to back this up, but everybody who's actually watching us taste these whiskeys on their little mobile devices or their laptops,
those are mobile.
I feel I'm going to suggest that this crowd doesn't.
Oh, okay. Well, then these are not exciting for anyone.
I feel very confident in everybody.
Everyone feel free to get up and go to the restroom now because we're getting into the boring part of the tasting.
No. I mean to say that I think maybe everybody in chat tell me if I'm wrong here, but I think this crowd, they can appreciate all sorts of things irrespective of like these two styles. And now our friend Scott over here, who's not here tonight, he might be different, and so you give him a hard time. But as you can see, this is the red color cap suggests it is deep, rich, and dried fruits. This, everybody, is in fact the new gold medal winner from the San Francisco World Spirits Competition 2023.
One of the many gold winners.
One of 10 award winners. We submitted 10. We got 10 awards this year. Just found out the other day. Sent the email today, I think, to everybody. So we'll be releasing all of them in the future, and this is the first one. It's cask 80.39, achingly beautiful. Love that name. Another Space Cider, 13 years. Now this one spent time in 2 casks as well, as you can see with the description scrolling across the bottom. First in an ex-bourbon hogshead, and then a first fill ex-Marsala wine barrique, which I would say I have not seen in a long time. I haven't seen a cask aged or finished or aged fully in Marsala like in years, I would say. Maybe you're different. I don't know.
Not from the society.
That's what I meant. Yeah,
it's been a while.
So,
and it's not. I don't know. Do you drink Marsala or just cook with it? I don't know if that's like I don't have a great frame of reference on what this cask is expected to do here.
Well, type of fortified wine, right? So it's going to be thick. It's going to be rich. Yeah, you're right. Traditionally used in America for cooking. Maybe used in. I'm trying to think of other cuisines that would use. I was say French cooking. No, they probably use mostly French wine. But we'll see. Similar to like an Oloroso sherry, I think in profile, a little bit more funky. Not quite as funky as Madeira, but let's give it a go. Obviously, the fact that it's deep, rich, and dried fruit suggests that we'll get a lot of cask influence. It's usually what we see. So give it a go.
Oh boy, there is a lot happening there. Funky, a lot of raisin. Definitely dried fruits like all over. I had Ethiopian food last night. I get some like Ethiopian food in there. Just like those spices that come together, some like licorice even, which is not Ethiopian food spices, but getting that in here.
Oh. So Marsala is Italian by origin, as I understand. I know little. I would venture to bet it's mostly used for cooking because I don't see a lot of it bottled. But I mentioned it's kind of like in between an Oloroso sherry and a Madeira. Madeira is like a very funky, wild style of fortified wine. Oloroso is more dry and nutty. This is in between. But just nosing this really smells like an intense, rich Madeira.
It smells very intense. Like that cask. I hope that didn't come across as negative because it's just like my eyes are almost watering from the amount of just raisin and like, I don't know, it's punchy. It's there's a lot happening and I'm having a really hard time pulling out all the different notes because I don't know, similar to the last one, but much bigger. There's just, it's a cacophony of just tons of stuff going on.
Yeah. Really, really, really rich, deep, rich,
dry,
sort of, dried. Yeah, but fruits. No, it's funny. It smells wet. You know what you know what I'm saying about? I mean, it's
like a white cask. Like
yeah, that's probably what it's probably something in my sort of memory or my mind that's been triggered, but I'm thinking of wine, fortified wine, like sort of stained the inner linings of a glass and just drying out, but still wet, heavy on the raisin notes. I don't know why I'm swirling. I never swirl whiskey. I've been doing that.
really?
Really?
No, I do.
Oh, what's the Scottish saying that you don't need to agitate a Scotsman. A Scotsman's already agitated. Something that's the old saying. And why not to? And the whole purpose of swirling, which is to trigger the alcohol vapors to boost aroma.
Volatilize.
When something's 57.8% here, it's already agitated. So
I just got a note that I have never gotten from any other whiskey, and only ever from the one thing that smells like this: Cool Ranch Doritos.
okay, so my favorite chip growing up, for what it's worth. I have a long history with that. Those Cool Ranch Doritos. You could have named anyone, but you said that you went there.
I still smell it. It's not like it was just a thing that came.
I really regret that you said that because I think I smell it now too. Yeah. I've lost the raisins. Again, this is sort of first pour out of the bottle, but
that's all I can smell now. Yeah,
Mark,
Cool Ranch is the best Dorito.
I agree.
That is correct. Yeah, 100%.
I agree. Evan Bell earlier said raisins are the ultimate dried fruit. Man, I'm big on dried apricots and banana chips, if that counts, but I don't disagree. The raisins
or plantain chips.
Oh yeah, I am hungry.
There's a little I don't know, it's called Don Vittorio's Market by my parents' house in Florida, and they just have all of this amazing fresh fruit, and they have like dried guava and dried papaya, and it is next level because I think they do it themselves. I mean, it's just so fresh. Anyway, let's taste this thing.
Well,
oh,
interesting.
It's a lot subtler than the nose.
I think so.
I see you disagree.
No, I just asked the question if you think so. Like,
oh yeah,
subtle in which ways? Like the overall profile?
I would have expected it to be bigger. Like this has a delicacy to it, its mouth weight, mouth feel, and then I felt like I was just getting a rush of lots of things hitting me in the face when I nosed it. And here it's actually kind of restrained and kind of working through its evolution. It's not a wall of flavors hitting me. It's actually demonstrating evolution, complexity, growth as it sits on my palate.
I mean, I think one thing is clear. It's very, very cask heavy. I think for my first impression of the aroma, just of it being wet, and you suggested like a dripping cask or a wet cask, that definitely carried through. The texture of the whiskey itself is very evocative of the texture of like the wine itself. So there's no doubt in my mind that there's a lot of wine in this. And interestingly, this is not full term. I would have, if you told me this was full term, I would have believed you. I think the wine cask is that prevalent, which suggests that if it was just a finish for a year or two, it was probably a really, really intense,
a very active cask.
Yeah, very active cask. Yeah.
Well, it's a barrique too. So it's barrique is like a mid-size, right? It's bigger than a
slightly larger than a hogshead.
Yeah, but it's not like
in between a butt
or anything.
Yeah. I think if we looked it up, we should look it up. I think it's the volume of a barrique is pretty close to a hogshead.
Okay, I'm doing some live research right here.
Barrique is a slightly larger hogshead with the long shape of a butt. Interesting.
225 liters. So it's similar.
Yeah, in between. So I think we were right. It's just in between.
But much closer to a hogshead.
250 to 300 liter capacity, and a hogshead is 225 to 250, and a butt is 475 to 500.
Yeah.
Okay.
So back to the whiskey.
Good talking.
I also would say, like, if you told me this was 53%, that's probably where I would have guessed it blind. A good bit lower than where it's actually clocking in. It's especially for a freshly opened bottle. Really, really approachable.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm looking to see, there was a comment here I want to address about the availability. So we have releasing tomorrow 114 minus 2, the one that you have here and the one that I have here. So 112 bottles will be available for sale tomorrow. So yeah.
Meaty, definitely meaty.
Meatier, drier, nuttier version of Distillery 9, which is close by. I think the meaty, it's very, very savory.
Yeah.
I'm struggling to really understand it beyond the cask, because I think for me, Marsala is a type of wine, and Marsala wine casks are it's just not something I'm as familiar with, so I don't personally have enough experience. I would venture to bet that most people don't have enough experience with Marsala wine casks to really say, like, okay, I have a solid understanding, and therefore I know what the spirit is doing beneath it. So for me, it's very, very cask heavy. So
I think one of the things we touched on last week, if it was last week, on our sherry conversation was the potential for like sulfuric notes, which I think also sometimes overlap with meaty notes, and whether that is an exclusively good thing, exclusively bad thing, or somewhere in between. I'm on the somewhere in between side and lean normally bad. I do get it a little bit in this case, but it's in the actually good way. It's very, very mild and just almost presents to me more as like a funk, which with that meatiness and kind of like a lamby, gamey meatiness just adds like a layer of almost preparation. Like the way char on meat, in some ways you can be like, oh, that's charred, it's too carbonated, it's no good. Or it can just add a little bit of extra complex flavor. This is almost like just a dusting of slightly sulfuric complexity that I think actually works really well with those meaty and dried fruit undertones. So Scott, there are times where it works. You're right.
Yeah, that was a big takeaway of the sulfur debate. I wouldn't call it a debate. Maybe it's just a difference of opinions, I would say. But yeah, I was really just doubling down on the fact that it's a very cask-driven whiskey, because I just know some people really like that, some people don't like that so much. So continuing our theme of this is QVC for the night. That's just
call in now if you are a fan of cask-heavy whiskeys.
No, yeah, but if you're not, I just want to set the expectation. I would say, there is such value in this whiskey, in that it is Marsala wine and it's totally different. And it it's
also not like Distillery 80 is one you see on the block every day. I mean, this is a pretty unique combination of things. I'm trying to think of another Distillery 80 I've had, society or otherwise. It's definitely not one that jumps out in memory right away. That's something I've seen often.
Yeah. Well, let's go number 5. Last one of the night, everybody. Thanks for hanging around. We've gained more viewers than we had when we had that big 55 moment. Everything was 55.
Perhaps some people stumbling home from a live Outturn to see what we think of the whiskeys they just tried.
We're doing a lot of tastings in person at the moment. A lot of people drinking these whiskeys in all the big cities. Neither Charlie or I live in a big city, which is kind of funny to think about. I'm from one, but I don't actually live in one. Well, I guess I live in a bigger city than your city, maybe. I don't know.
I don't know about that. I know my airport's a lot busier than your airport, but
I would totally disagree with that.
We're like the number 10 busiest airport in the world.
No way.
Yeah, it's an American Airlines hub. So
I was just there. I had a layover there last month.
Thanks for calling.
Well, yeah, you're right. You're welcome. It was 55 minutes. 55 minutes.
Yeah.
It was
55. 55.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
All right. So
For
let's go
those
to
who just joined,
number. Hold on. Okay. Shoot, your city is larger than mine. Oh, this is from 2018.
Yeah, your city's changed a lot.
Oh, wow. Okay, the city's doubled in the last 5 years.
No one cares right now, Ben. Let's get to Whiskey 5.
I live in Nashville, so I just want to say neither of our cities are large enough for an Outturn preview. But all right, everyone.
All right, number 5.
Last one of the night. You know where we're going? We're going peat, but we're going light peat tonight. This is cask 4.319 from Coast to Kiln. I love that name.
Yeah.
I just want to establish that. I love that name. From Coast to Kiln.
I'm trying here.
Kiln being the device in which the malted barley is dried before it's chopped into grist in the whiskey making process. This is a big one on paper, I should say. Also aged in 2 different casks. First next bourbon hogshead, and then a first fill ex bourbon barrel. Both bourbon, but 2 different casks. Transferred into a more active cask. 63.3%. So by far the strongest whiskey of the night. Also the youngest, which is funny because every time we do these streams, these previews, I should say, we start with the youngest ones and then sort of get older as we progress, but not tonight.
Well, that's the benefit of peat. Sometimes I think young peat is just going to be fun. You know, I think there are benefits to old peat, there's benefits to young peat, and that's part of what makes peat great. Evan is asking, is Distillery 4 considered Highland? Yes, it is. So it is an island whiskey, and technically the islands are all part of the Highlands.
But that was part of the changes that we were talking about earlier, right? In 2009, when the Scotch Whisky Association redefined, because there were 6 regions. Now there are 5. Isn't that the case? The islands were.
Right now, you're actually. I don't think the islands were ever made official. That's. I
thought they
were. Might have. You're saying they were previously, and then they lost their stat. They're Pluto of the Scotch world.
Yeah, I'm sure someone in chat can answer this, but or look it up. I believe that it used to be there were 6 regions, and the islands were one of them. Non-Isla islands. I can begin that. To be frank, in 2009, I was drinking Johnny Walker Red, so it's been a while.
Actually, I don't know if I've ever had Johnny Walker Red.
Okay, well, nobody's perfect, but all right.
Okay.
I love the name. 10 years old, sweet heathery peat is what we can expect on paper from this, and right in the glass, you can just tell that the fact this was transferred to an active bourbon barrel has really sort of tamed the peat influence. It is within the scope of lightly peated. It is very, very, very light.
You could fool me into an oily and coastal.
Oh, right. Yeah, you're right.
I think it stays. I think it's rightly defined here. I do get enough peat that I'd put it lightly peated. But if you told me that this had ended up oily and coastal, I'd be like, okay, it's a peat or oily and coastal. That happens sometimes. Definitely nice vanilla, but like a little bit of that freezer burn element that I usually get in Campbellton whiskeys a bit more. It's not as pronounced as it is when I get it in a Campbellton, but.
Okay. Well, I have a hot take, and I'm just going to be open and transparent here. This is a standout for me for reasons that I recognize may be influenced by the fact that it's also my 5th of the evening. No, I'm being truthful, but there's something specific I like about this, and this will tell everybody in chat everything that you need to know about me. But the fact that you have to look hard for the peats because it is so subtle, I found myself really inhaling like strongly. And in that process, everything else we've had, all these other cask strength whiskeys, everything's sort of been on the surface. We haven't had to do too much digging. The second one, that 55 that you called out, is saying like everything's like, here I am. What would you like? Here's this and here's that. This isn't that. This one, you really have to do some digging. And I like a whiskey where you actually have to go on a little bit of a hunt to extract everything. And I think in the process of doing a really deep inhale, I picked up a lot more. Like, I was trying to think of an analogy. It's kind of like this is so lame because this is random. Like on my iPhone with like haptic feedback.
Okay.
Like the firmer you press on something, the firmer the actual outcome. And it's kind of like that with nosing this whiskey. Maybe that was really dumb, but I stand.
I like it. I get it. As the other person who has an opinion to share and is nosing the glass, I agree. The more you pull, the more it gives. What it reminds me of a bit is I've actually not been to Orkney. It's definitely on the bucket list, but I've spent an odd amount of time in Dunnet Bay, which is like basically the northernmost point. It's not John O'Groats's, but it's right below the northernmost point in the mainland of the United Kingdom, Britain. And it's right across from Orkney, and just the smell of the air on the beach with like this kelp and the sand, it smells so much like that. I'm not going to comment on that comment.
I'm sorry, Charlie. I'm listening to you. I don't want to interrupt.
But yeah, I get like that mixed with shock tarts, mixed with like light peat, and then just a ton of stuff I haven't put my finger on yet.
Yeah, it's really all there once you go. But I really love this comment. I think this for me is the comment, the whiskey of the night and the comment of the night. My favorite Orkney distillery is 1 Highland Park 2 and Undisclosed Orkney Distillery 3. Because, and perhaps I hope I'm understanding this correctly, number 2 is also number 1.
Most of the time, yeah.
Okay. Just that's such a funny whiskey nerd comment. Like that is as nerdy as
deep cut.
How about on Isla? You ever see on Isla? That's another one.
Yeah. Martin, you'll probably appreciate this. At one point in time, I was working for the parent company that owns your 8th place finisher here. And I was tasked with evaluating the business case for keeping that distillery imported to the US. And my recommendation was that it shouldn't be. based on sales volumes, based on product. They make a lot of lovely distillate. It's just we don't get to see any of it, and their official releasings are lackluster at best, and in my opinion, overpriced. But then I had to revise that strategy to no, we are keeping it, and tell us why and how we're keeping it. And so I had to change tack after telling them that I came in a little bit guns a-blazing in my younger age.
What did you tell them, that number 1 and 2 are occupied from the distillery?
Yeah. Well,
being third place when there's only 2 distilleries. Isn't there a third now? I'm thinking of I'm sorry, the hotel. I'm thinking of Isle of Skye.
Yeah.
When Talisker used to be the only one on Isle of Skye.
But like, what in terms of the islands, what are they doing with things like Raasay? Are they just bringing more islands in now? I think there's other islands that have started.
Well, yeah, more distilleries are opening up on other islands.
Yeah, for sure. So is the world of islands just expanding? Are they making a hard push for official recognition?
I saw on Instagram last week that a Scottish island was for sale.
I saw that too.
For $190,000. I think I posted something. I reposted on Instagram.
Do you think we could do like a global society member GoFundMe, and the society buys the island as not like a member's house, but just a member's island, and you can go and hang out there?
Yeah, I mean, we could. One could do that. I think getting supplies would be one thing. Anyway, we'll talk about Lord of the Flies later. I mean, I think until then, yeah.
Did the society ever come out with a whiskey called Lord of the Flies? I feel like they might have.
I don't know. Well, the rings were taken.
Okay, let's taste this thing, shall we?
Yeah, I have. Your turn.
Oh, you have. Oh, my
so I was a little distracted. I'm going to go back. I added just a little dash of water. I think it's a very, for an island whiskey, a little bit of sea foam. I think very, very faint. Uh, Barely any sort of brine that you would expect from a lot of coastal whiskeys. But that bourbon barrel, that first fill bourbon barrel, has added some warmth to what would be otherwise like a very cool, cold whiskey. So it's really, what's your experience with it?
It's got me a bit at a loss for words, which is a great thing. I did not expect that. Distillery 4 is one that I love in a lot of forms, but the peatier variants of it are actually ones I typically like less, even though I love peat. I don't know why. And it's one that, again, kind of contrary to how I typically operate, I love the sherry influence on more than I do with most other distilleries. And this one is knocking it out of the park. And for me, I think a reason for that is it really straddles to me one leg in each of what Distillery 4 typically does, with a good bit of what Distillery 93 typically does. And those are two of my favorites, just as like distilleries in general. Those are both very, very high on my list. And so it kind of tames down the heather, the honey that I normally get, and brings in some more of those Campbelltowny, funky, kind of engine oily, but not quite that intense, really coastal, but not super kelpy. And then that like freezer burn note that I just really enjoy. It's got a ton going on.
Yeah, I would say I sort of at second sip got a lot more of the classical Orcadian peat notes.
Okay.
And the heather is very there. It's more smoky than before. And actually, I should mention I added some water to it. So with some water, it's become more smoky, less warm, which is a fancy way of saying colder. And yeah, but I think the point to make for sure is that like even within our lightly peated flavor profile, this is still for me straddling the lines between lightly peated and oily and coastal. It's very, very faint.
For sure.
I think we came at this with like a really saturated palate, which I guess we've had with whiskeys, this is our fifth. But if you were eating some dinner or something and had barbecue and taste this, you probably wouldn't get any of the peat. So I just want to express that because that's what you'll get here.
Do you get any of the cheesy notes, or is that just where I'm at the end of the night?
Yeah, I didn't per se, but like I think you've suggested a few notes that I've then picked up. One being the Cool Ranch Doritos. So let me. I know what you mean, though. I mean, like, okay, was it on the aroma or on the palate or both?
The cheesy?
Yeah.
A little bit of both. Yeah, I think I get more on the nose than on the palate. But
there's like a musky note that I would get with like some. Almost like a blue cheese. It's so faint, though. I feel like I'm probably reaching a little bit for it.
Yeah.
Versus just experiencing it.
And now I'm getting like some of the spices you can get in certain ales, like a dark, like a laughing at me like I'm crazy. Oh,
I'm sorry. It's just because I'm okay. It's just because I'm like clicking on the comments that I feel bad because I feel like Charlie, every time you're talking, I'm clicking on the comments, but they've been so on tonight that like they've always been good, and I feel that I've been doing you a disservice. And
you're lacking at active listening. You're actively reading.
I'm multitasking right now.
Of course, you should pay attention to the audience over me.
Yeah, just doing my job. Tamar with the classic question: do you have a spreadsheet for the outturn tomorrow? Well. We can all blame Scott for not preparing one. However, in his absence,
Scott's gotten a lot of flack for not being here tonight.
Poor Scott. He's the best. Scott's the best. He's just not here tonight. He's actually in Chicago, hosting a tasting event. So, nevertheless, I've just put one together. So we'll see if this works. So yeah, in a moment we'll post I'll share an actual spreadsheet, nothing that looks pretty with colors. It's just a true spreadsheet.
And since Ben only shows the comments that relate to him, Sean, I see you. Thank you very much.
You can just click on the comments yourself.
I can't. You're the host. I'm just a guest.
Oh well, next time. Oh, okay. Well, next time. Sorry, you're right. We got to Charlie's still the new guy. We'll get you in the login as an admin, and then you just help me manage this. I'm like, what is he doing? He's not clicking on anything. Does he not get the point that we're supposed to click on the comments?
No, I'm just over here reading and hoping everyone's following along.
Okay, well, can everybody say something nice to Charlie? If he really wants some validation that he knows his shit. So, let's all give Charlie a
hey, someone said I'm pulling out all the crazy tasting notes tonight, and I appreciate that because I tried.
Let's kind of comment.
Yeah, I'm always honest though. I just have a really odd memory for certain flavors, like the Cool Ranch Doritos. I can just go to opening that bag by the pool when I was little.
I'm still looking for that comment, but found it. Warren Buff. Charlie's hitting it out the park with the weird tasting notes.
There we go.
Nice.
Thank you, Warren.
Nice. All right. Well,
spreadsheet.
I wonder if your thoughts are clear on this, Tom. All right. Let me share the spreadsheets for tomorrow. And again, apologize. It's not really exactly the most prepared thing. Can you even see this?
It's up.
Here's my spreadsheet, you guys. Again, sorry, it's very spread.
You might want to drop that column C.
Drop column C. Whatever. There you go. That's what we have here. This is on our back end. So now you guys know what we have going. We got no secrets here. So this is what we have. I think, and I'm glad I kept this because it's actually useful, because what we have in our glass right now is actually not a single cask. It's actually an ultra small batch bottle, which is important to note. I think that contributes a lot. That's really interesting. So I think there's more to the story, and that will be released tomorrow. And yeah.
And as for the Distillery 135, just to make it even more complicated, it is one of more than one distillates from this distillery that goes into 135.
Yeah. Yep. So there you go. Take your screenshot. And yeah. There's a question of what is something called?
What is the
A wee sweet tooth Scottish picnic.
So this is what I got to see before I knew what we were going to be tasting tonight. And I just went through this and was like, I really want to try every single one of these. So, yeah, it's a pretty dang good outturn tomorrow.
Yeah. Whiskey Franco says, Charlie's the man. Can't wait to hang our more on these lives. Oh, can we hang out more on these lives?
Yeah, or in person, Whiskey Franco. I don't know where you live. Cool Ranch was astute. I don't know how they could know that, but I appreciate it.
Look at this guy right here. Sanctus Vitae. Charlie, your descriptor of Cool Ranch was astute with the Office background. I used to use that for my Zoom virtual background as the Office.
Oh, that's awesome.
Good stuff, Charlie. Look at this. Look at all this. Look at those.
Now you're just overcompensating. You went like real low index.
Charlie, don't let them fool you. F and G is not a term of endearment. Are there any promotions as a result of the medal winning in San Francisco? I'm not sure I understand why that would be a trigger. I'm being serious. There are no promotions. I think we're actually, Trevor, it's a good point you bring up. We're working on some promotions for the near future to be for all members, but not for this one. I expect the one that we had today, that was the gold medal winner, will probably be in high demand. So just be mindful. It's coming out at 1:00 tomorrow Eastern time. So sorry, Trevor, no direct promotions as a result of the medal. We will, as I mentioned, there were 10 award winners, and we'll be releasing all 10 of them coming up in months and well, not years, but yeah, probably within the course of a year as well. So
one point actually that I want to bring up on the medaling process, because I didn't know this until a few years ago when I was further along my journey. The difference between gold and double gold. It sounds kind of strange. What is double gold? It's just that it means every judge on the panel unanimously awarded it gold. So it's not like it's some other tier. It just means there were 0 dissenters. Everyone thought it was top class, best in show quality. So for anyone who didn't know, I know all of these award systems, rating systems can be ambiguous, confusing. It's pretty huge honor to have 4 that got double gold, 5 that got double gold. Pretty crazy. And it doesn't mean that gold is any kind of slouch either, because it just means that maybe one person thought that it wasn't perfect. You weren't listening, were you? You were reading the comments.
Really important. It's an important differentiator. It's not saying really double gold is much better than gold in that sense. I mean, that's my interpretation of it.
Agreed.
It's equally valid. I think you and I, Charlie, can assess these whiskeys equally and make our own awards, quite frankly, and probably be equally credible. But I digress.
Well, that's why it's nice that it's from the San Francisco Wine and Spirits competition and not from, Jimmy John's sandwich and spirits competition, which I wouldn't be surprised if that exists, knowing what's happening in the industry at the moment.
Yeah, they might pick Crown Royal Harvest, Northern Harvest Rye. That was an old one for you guys. Question from Steve Szymanski. Any promotion for the 55 for the 55 financial line?
Message Ben personally, and he'll see what he can do.
You can email at ben@55.com. That's my email address. I'm serious. Martin Fielder, I don't give Ben a hard time. I'm sorry. The first 2. So let's recap real quick, Charlie. We've been running for quite a while on the stream. What a standout for you, or something, a moment in tasting these that you, in reflection, that just as include your tasting experience here, that you really, as your core takeaway, what would it be?
I'm a little bit surprised in that maybe it's just because of where we are in the night, but I think this 4.319 might have been, if I were personally to be buying just one, I think that it might be that one. And I don't think I was able to give it enough attention just where we are in the night, and we were getting a little sidetracked here and there. But this thing is just a blow away whiskey. I mean, I'm thrilled with this thing, and there was a lot of incredible whiskey on the table. So, for me, I think that's the biggest surprise of the night. This time I'm reading the comments. So,
I tend to agree. I think when I was first nosing this one, I thought this is really, really special. But I felt that the reasons they were special were too personal to me, and my own. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like what you said, I would buy this one, but I think it's all relative to what you have, what you've liked, what you've enjoyed. Like I had a moment with nosing this. I was like, wow, this is really fun. I'm looking back, sort of the whiskeys here. The first one we had was fantastic. It was such a great start. And I think you had your story about the fact that you own a cask from that distillery. That was great. I don't know that I have a favorite of all of these. I wasn't necessarily asking for a favorite, but just so far.
You put me on the spot, and then you go, Mr. Diplomatic over here.
I elaborate. I wasn't necessarily looking for a favorite, because I mean, we all have. I'm trying to think for everybody, and watching this to think that's an interesting takeaway. Maybe there is none, but I think the first one was special. But the second one, I think, as I'm looking at the second one that was transferred into that number 3 cask, 55.71, this 14-year-old. I would say, like we do this every month. We do our hidden gem selection, 3 whiskeys that you might have missed. This would be a hidden gem for me,
Yeah, for sure.
for sure. You know what I mean?
I'm smelling it right now, and now it's just like syrup
Yeah,
on waffles or something. Like it's
yeah,
so decadent that just this little tiny bit in the glass is really bringing out with some air. I mean,
yeah,
that's crazy. Totally a hidden gem.
yeah. I don't mean to suggest that it's by any means better than the others tonight. These are all like, I'd say they're all equally good for their own reasons, for sure. But if you look back at the course of a year, like what are some interesting whiskeys? And I think this one has an interesting story to tell. So yeah. So if it's of interest, I would recommend this one, but not more or less than the others. Just worth trying.
Do we have to pick one for the drink along later this month, or since we have the
No.
festival?
Yeah. So after these, I say bad boys. After these whiskeys, we'll have some other festival bottlings this coming out throughout the month, in the coming weeks, and we'll be probably doing a recap at the end. I think was what we've announced, and you guys can go look at the upcoming streams we have scheduled here on the channel. We'll be doing one where we'll be tasting all the festival bottlings together at the end. So
Awesome.
So that's that.
Martin, definitely do check out Boulder Spirits. Both great people and great spirit. I know I think all gentlemen behind it, and they're doing a lot of stuff the right way. Really good liquid. I am hoping that the society will grab some casks of theirs. And now that I'm on the inside, I'm going to see what I can do.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Well, thanks for watching tonight. Good luck tomorrow, the release.
Good luck tomorrow with work.
Good luck trying to choose, because I don't think we've made it necessarily easier for anybody. But really, I can confidently say all of these.
Yeah, you're not going to be upset.
Any one of these, and yeah, that's where I'm at. All right, I'm signing off. Good to see you.
Cheers.
Charlie, thank you. Cheers.
Thanks, Ben.